This is Dr. Rob Harder with the Nonprofit Leadership Podcast, Making Your World Better. What does it take to be an effective nonprofit leader today? What are the biggest challenges? What are the biggest obstacles? How should nonprofits fundraise in an economy that is constantly changing? All of these reasons combined led me to start this show. And it's my hope that through this series, people can learn not only what it takes to be an effective nonprofit organization, but to hear from effective leaders who are successfully making a positive impact in their communities. We hope you enjoy the show, as together we hear how they are making their world better. This podcast is sponsored by DonorBox. DonorBox, helping you help others with the best donation forms in the business. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Nonprofit Leadership Podcast. Wherever you're listening today, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and thanks for tuning in. You know, today, really, the discussion I'm going to have with my guest is a continuation of a conversation that I started several months ago with Justin Spelhaug from Microsoft. Maybe you remember that episode. It was really a fascinating episode. I got a lot of feedback from that particular interview with Justin, because Microsoft, as you can imagine, they're so big. They're doing so many interesting things in their social impact arm, specifically around the issue of AI. And that's the topic of conversation today. And more specifically, can AI be used for good? And can AI actually help you and your nonprofit organization? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about with my guests today. In fact, I have two guests today. I've got Nies and Sam Caplan. They're both from Submittable. And what they're going to talk about is everything from how can AI be used for good, but practically, if you're a bit skeptical about AI, what are some of the first or next steps that you can take to really start putting this into practice? And what they found is one of the best benefits of AI is to create more time in your schedule to do other things like face-to-face impact, actually serving your community, rolling up your sleeves and making a tangible difference. AI can actually free up some of your time that maybe you'd spend now on your computer that you no longer have to do, because AI can actually help you maximize your time. So a little bit more about my guests. So as I mentioned, we have Sam and Anne. Sam is the Vice President of Social Impact at Submittable, and Anne is the Director of Machine Learning, AI, and Data Science at Submittable. And real quick, Submittable is a software company essentially that helps thousands of organizations worldwide launch, manage, and measure social impact programs. And AI is one of their big focus areas recently. So I think you're going to really enjoy today's discussion about how can AI be used for good. As always, thanks for tuning in. Now on to the show. Well, welcome to the Nonprofit Leadership Podcast. I have Anne and Sam here from Submittable on the show. Anne and Sam, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, really glad to have both of you. And I know we're going to split up some of these questions so we get both of your perspectives. So first, let's just talk about Submittable a little bit. For my audience, they may not be as familiar with it. They've maybe heard the name, but we're going to talk a bit about your software program. You help thousands of organizations worldwide launch, manage, or measure social impact programs. You're also a big proponent of responsible AI technology for grant management and CSR efforts. That's helping organizations adopt AI really intentionally. And I thought it's kind of fun. You may know this. I had Justin Spelhaug from Microsoft on the show before, and I know you work very closely with Microsoft and Justin, I think specifically. And so I think that's kind of fun for my listeners to I remember Justin's interview, and that got a lot of traction. A lot of people are very interested in how do we use AI responsibly and wisely. And so I think this is going to be very much in that same vein. So maybe we can start with that. Give us an overview of what Submittable provides for nonprofit organizations.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, we are huge Justin Spelhaug fans also. So I was super glad that he warmed up the audience before we came on. Submittable is a software company, and we are headquartered in beautiful Missoula, Montana. We also have a really large presence in Bellevue, Washington. And we build software to help all types of foundations and governments and corporations launch and manage and measure their social impact programs. That software consists of a grants management system, and this is where funders can host grant applications and related forms. And we also have CSR and employee engagement software for employee volunteering and their giving and matching programs.
Oh, that's great. No, excellent. As I mentioned at the outset here, that the good use of AI is really an ongoing conversation. There's, I think, a lot of fear. And as I mentioned, Justin and I talked about this very thing. So one of the biggest concerns around AI really center around privacy, especially as it pertains to nonprofits, and particularly maybe people that you serve vulnerable populations often in nonprofit organizations, whether it be food insecurity or housing affordability, things like that. How do you find that balance between the use of AI just, for the great technology opportunities it provides, but having still privacy on the other end? And maybe you could speak to that one.
Yeah, so privacy is critical. It's very, very important. One of the biggest things that I think helps a lot with privacy is we don't let data go into models for training.
Okay.
So what that means is that the data doesn't go anywhere besides for the user. And so that keeps their data and their information private. The other big, maybe, trick, it's not really a trick, but thing that helps us with being more private is building on top of platforms like Azure, where we have really world-class privacy and security measures in place that we can then build on top of. Really helps us make sure that we have a solid privacy the whole way through the ecosystem, which is really critical. The other piece of it is, everybody has their own definition of what privacy is and their own level of comfort, I guess, with privacy. And so one of the things that we found really important as we're building our software is to give people the opportunity to opt out of using to say, even though I know it's private, I'm still not comfortable with it, so I don't want you to do it. And so in the end, the ultimate choice is up to the user. To that point, their data is still their data, and they have control over it, but they always have that ability to be as private as they want to with it.
We'll be right back. Are you looking for an easy and effective way to boost your nonprofit's donations? Look no further than DonorBox, the online fundraising platform that streamlines your fundraising efforts, maximizes donations, and simplifies giving for your supporters. With DonorBox, you can create beautiful donation forms, accept digital wallet payments, track donations, and send auto receipts. And the best part? There are no setup or monthly fees and no long-term contracts required. So what are you waiting for? Visit donorbox.org today to get started. That is donorbox.org. Are you ready to revolutionize your advocacy efforts and significantly impact policy change? Discover Quorum and level up your advocacy to better educate more lawmakers. Quorum is the only unified public affairs platform that empowers nonprofits to map, track, change, and report on the policy landscape, all in one place. Explore how Quorum Grassroots helps nonprofits create compelling campaigns in minutes. The result? Your nonprofit doesn't just participate in the advocacy, it drives it. Quorum, where influence meets innovation. You can learn more at quorum.us. Hey friends, and thanks so much for listening to the Nonprofit Leadership Podcast. I want to let you know that I've recently become a professional certified coach. With my nearly 30 years of nonprofit experience, I know firsthand how hard you work as a leader. I also know how important it is to have someone you can call on to get help with the barriers, the leadership challenges that you will face both professionally and personally. And I really want people to thrive, to become all they were meant to become by providing coaching and consulting services. So if coaching is something you've always been interested in, but maybe weren't quite sure what it was all about, I encourage you to reach out. You can go to my website, robharder.com, or just email me at rob@robharder.com. I would happy to provide a free sample coaching session so you can determine if coaching is for you. All right, thanks again for tuning in. Now back to the show. I'm glad to know that. And I think all that alleviates some fears of people that are listening. I know that Submittable is purposefully navigating the journey guided by AI, but you're trying to do that in collaboration with customers personally. So another related question, how do you balance that high tech that AI provides with the high touch approach? A lot of nonprofits really, I think, pride themselves on being highly relational. And so that's why I use the word high touch. How do you balance that high tech yet high touch at the same time? And Sam, maybe you could speak to this.
I can. That's a great question, Rob. So what I would refer to is that our product team has done this really extensive user research with tons of our customers and many of their nonprofit partners and other applicants who use our system. And the goal of all that research is really to identify their hopes and their concerns around AI. And we've paid really close attention to the feedback and the input that we've gotten from this large focus group of people. And we've used that to develop our responsible AI principles as well as develop our first AI features. And I'd love to share just a couple of those findings from the focus groups. What I found most just intriguing and really interesting about this is that most of the concerns that we heard really centered around a loss of human agency in that grant making process. And so, like the grant makers and funders, they seem to be mostly concerned that applicants are going to use AI to develop proposals and applications in a way that is sort of ultimately inauthentic and difficult to trust. And then on the other side of the equation, the nonprofits or applicants, they're super concerned that funders are going to use AI to review their applications in a way that removes people from that process. Ultimately, they're really concerned that their applications are going to be overlooked simply because they don't have like a particular keyword or they're not using certain language. The other side is that both sides are really hopeful that AI can be used as their digital assistant. You know, what they expect out of AI is that they can use it to reduce like a lot of administrative or busy work that they do every single day. You know, as we continue to develop AI based features, we're taking all of that input and all of that concern about the loss of human agency into consideration. And we really want to ensure that people remain at the center of that grant making process.
No, a lot of good things there you list. Now let's address those nonprofit leaders who may be listening and that are hesitant to embrace AI due to maybe limited resources on the one hand, or maybe just a lack of awareness or expertise around AI. What's the biggest benefit for them to start implementing AI tools specifically into their organization? And what would you say to that skeptic out there?
Yeah. So the biggest is improved efficiency. So when AI is used like a personal assistant or an intern, I love the intern analogy. It's a great one. It can do great things for you, both personally and for your organization. A couple of examples. One is in our platform, we've built in this smart import feature. So you can take a document and it basically pulls information out of the document and fills it into a form. This means that, you know, the applicant doesn't have to do all of that typing. And on the flip side, the grantor doesn't have to pull all that information out or try to match it up. It's done automatically for them.
Nice.
Another way that I use it every day in my life is with OpenAI's ChatGPT.
Okay.
I've always found it really difficult, right? I have a blank sheet of paper and it's like blankness in my mind. And how do you get started?
Yeah.
Give it a few prompts. It writes up a draft for you that you can start working from and you can start going from, right? And it just kicks you off. And so I think that if you approach AI, not that it's doing your job for you, but it's helping you do your job better. That's where you're going to start to really see great impact and like compounding impact of it, right? Because now you're freed up. Both your mind, your energy, your time are all freed up to focus in on the areas where you've been giving less attention. That probably really need your particular brand of time.
Well, and let's add to that and say, maybe you could speak to this a bit for those who are really like, I have no idea. They barely even know what AI is. That's just so new to them. They just finally got used to social media perhaps. And now they're like, what is AI? What are those first initial steps to get started with AI and maybe some of the tools that Anne just mentioned?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, I think one of the things that really like sets AI apart is that it's one of the only like emerging technologies that we've seen in recent years that requires like almost no knowledge or expertise or experience to get started with it. Like you don't have to have a computer science background to be able to use artificial intelligence. So it's super easy. You can create a free account at OpenAI and use ChatGPT right away. And you can even just log into like Microsoft's Bing search engine and use their version of generative AI right away. So I'd encourage anyone who wants to learn how to use generative AI really well to just do a little bit of research on what we call prompt engineering. And that's just a fancy term for really figuring out a more strategic way of asking those AI chatbots questions and giving them directions to produce really good, useful results. And lastly, a nod to our friend Justin over at Microsoft. So if you're a Microsoft customer, the absolute easiest and fastest way to start using AI is just to take advantage of those Microsoft Copilot applications that they've built into M365, into Teams. Like those Copilots are digital AI assistants, and they're really, really powerful. And they can, with your permission, take advantage of data that you already have in your Microsoft account, like your email and your calendar, and even the documents that you create in Word and PowerPoint. So really, that's like one of the easiest, fastest, simplest ways of getting started with AI, also in a way that happens to be really private and secure.
Great to know that. Well, another issue that pops up when it comes to the use of AI, again, particularly with vulnerable populations in mind, is the fear of implicit bias that's maybe built into the technology. How have you at Submittable really tried to mitigate that potential bias? And maybe Anne, you could speak to this first.
Yeah, of course. This is a big passion area for me personally.
Okay.
The way we start is at the very beginning. No one knows the biases that are inherent in a system better than the experts that work within that system. And so when I get my scientists together and we're working on a new AI project, the first place we go to is experts. And we talk to them about, what is the problem we're trying to solve? What are the biases that exist in the system today? What are the things we should be concerned about? And start addressing those early. Now, that being said, no one's perfect. We're all going to make mistakes, and we know that. So we build into our systems both automated ways for feedback to occur so people can automatically give feedback. And then we also work with our marketing and customer facing teams to go out and talk to customers and get feedback on the platform so that we make sure it's behaving in ways that we expect it to. And if we're finding something that is, demonstrating some kind of bias or is outside of what we would like to represent, then we're going to go back and work on fixing it and resolving it. And I think that's really the answer, is this continuous feedback cycle.
As my listeners are hearing this and they may want to know some examples, like where are you seeing this being done well, particularly when it comes to nonprofits? So can you give a couple of examples where you're seeing great results of AI being used for good? Sam, maybe you could give an example, and Anne, you could give an example.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to give my favorite AI example out there. So
Okay.
Goodwill Industries is a large nonprofit organization, and they built this really, really cool AI-based application. And what it does is it lets an employee at Goodwill take a photo of like a clothing item that they plan to sell at one of their retail stores. They also take a photo of the tag that might be inside that garment, and then the generative AI creates a description of that item kind of based on the photograph and what it can discover from that label. And then it even creates a price for that item based on historic pricing of similar items at Goodwill. At that point, a human reviews it and they click a button, and then that post goes live on a Goodwill website. And it's a huge time saver, and it allows for Goodwill to get items posted much more quickly, which means that they can sell them more quickly and ultimately generate revenue for their nonprofit organization much more quickly and with a lot less labor than they had been able to in the past.
That's a cool example. I like that, actually.
Yeah.
Like everyone's heard of Goodwill. So that's, I can imagine that saves, hundreds of hours over a period of time, right? Of just making it so quick. So
yeah,
love that.
I'm positive.
Yeah. And what's an example from you?
Yeah. So as soon as I saw this question, I was like, oh, this is my favorite thing lately, which is you can use AI, take your camera, point it at some text written in a foreign language, and it will translate that text for you. Not just translate it, right? But it will also tell you how to pronounce it. So you can play an audio and you've got like a robot voice reading it back to you. It's amazing. The way we've been using that inside of our platform is to translate forms into other languages. What does this do? It allows the grantors to reach a broader audience of people, right? With less work to do all of that translation. And so, of course, translations aren't perfect, but they're better than not having them, right? And so This allows more people to get engaged and helps us start reaching across cultural boundaries. And for me, that's really one of the most exciting applications of AI, is how it makes the world bigger for us while also allowing us to still be ourselves.
So a nonprofit, listener is hearing this and they're like, Submittable. Okay, so what do you offer nonprofit organizations? They wanted to utilize your software or whatever. Tell us a little bit more about what you offer. And I'm assuming you offer things for both small, medium, and large nonprofits.
Yeah, so the majority of our customers are grant makers, and so they might be nonprofits in the sense of being a foundation. They might be in the public sector. They could be a state government or a local agency. They might be a corporation or a business that has a CSR program around grants or employee volunteering, employee giving. I would just encourage everybody, check out the website. You'll get a much better feel for who we are, what we do, what we're all about. We give you lots of opportunities to to set up demos, to learn about our products. And, the other thing that we do a lot of is we just try to put some great content out into the world about grant making and philanthropy and corporate social responsibilities. Definitely check out submittable.com/AI. You'll learn all about our responsible AI practices and some of those features that we're building into the platform that Anne's mentioned.
Good stuff. Well, of course, this technology is changing, I feel like, all the time. Sometimes daily, it feels like. So as you look into the future, what are you two most excited about when it comes to all the different potential uses of good, again, of AI? So maybe, Anne, you could speak, and then Sam, how can we use AI really for good to impact the nonprofit sector?
Yeah, I think what I'm most excited about is, and this is where most of my career has been, in getting rid of administrative work, right? Getting rid of that tedious work that you're doing behind a computer. So what I'm really excited to see is, as we get rid of more and more of that work, what that frees people up to do, right? What does this mean for people being able to do that they haven't been able to do? All of those dreams that I know there are people sitting in offices working behind computers today, all of this, if I just didn't have to do this data input or this administrative thing, what could I be doing instead? I'm really excited to see what opportunities open up because of this.
I like that. No, it's good to know all this more free time or just more impactful time. Actually, person-to-person time.
I think more impactful time.
Yeah. Sam, what else would you add to that?
Well, I would say, speaking of impact, like, you can't talk about the nonprofit sector without talking about impact. And I think one of the greatest challenges of the nonprofit sector has really been figuring out, like, what sort of impact are we actually making in the world? Like, are we changing systems? Are we making the world a better place, and in what ways? And it's hard enough, like, for individual organizations, whether that's a nonprofit or whether that's a funder, to accurately assess, like, the impact that they're making in the world. I think with AI, it gives us the opportunity to start pointing that artificial intelligence at impact reports and user stories, like, from multiple organizations, both on the nonprofit and the funder side. And I think that with AI, we can finally start to, like, aggregate all of that data and get a much better understanding of, collectively, like, how are we changing systems? Are we going in the right direction? We can use AI to, like, uncover hidden insights in all of this data that's so disparately far-flung all over the nonprofit sector. So I really just can't wait to see, like, how we can begin to use AI to, like, actually make sense of all the data that we have out there.
Good stuff. Well, thanks again for being on the show today. So how can people find out a little bit more about you too, whether it be on social media or in some other spot, and Submittable itself? Remind my listeners of where they can find more information.
Yeah, so submittable.com is our website, and you can find out everything you ever wanted to know and more about our company and our platform there. For me personally, I'm Sam Caplan, and I'm super active on LinkedIn. So I would encourage you, if you have an interest at that intersection of nonprofit and philanthropy and technology, like, I'm your guy. So connect with me out there on LinkedIn.
Sounds good. How about you, Anne?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn also. I'm Anne Nies. I definitely love to talk about AI, so it's probably what you're going to hear a lot about from me. But I love to engage in conversations about it. It's one of my favorite talking points, and not just the technical side, but also the more practical side of what it means for us in the real day-to-day life. So, want to have a conversation? I'm definitely open for it anytime.
Excellent. Well, Sam and Anne, thank you. Thanks for being on the show, sharing your insights. Thanks for what you're doing to really, hopefully, give more time to nonprofit leaders so they can really have a greater impact through their organization. And again, always, I know you're busy, so thanks for taking time to be on the show.
Of course. Thank you.
Hey friends, I wanted you to know that this podcast can be found on both iTunes and Spotify. If you're wondering how to find it, just type in the words Nonprofit Leadership Podcast, and this podcast should show up. We also encourage you, when you go on iTunes, let us know what you think. Give us a review. Give us a rating. We would love to hear what you think of this podcast, and your feedback will help expand this podcast to get it out to as many people as possible. You can also find other resources and interviews of past guests on my website, nonprofitleadershippodcast.org. Again, that website is nonprofitleadershippodcast.org. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep making your world better.